Hello everyone, and welcome to Drag Race Rejudged, where today I will be taking a look at how All Stars 9 would have gone if I had been the judge/producer. I am not going to make the claim that my judging in the season is perfect, but I do believe the final product I ended up with here is fairer than what happened on the original season. All of that said, before I get into the actual video, there are a few things about the format of the season that I will be changing for my rejudging. Number 1, I will not be including the Ruby Snippers. On the original version of All Stars 9, not only did it have literally no impact on the competition, but on the original season, the Ruby Snippers were assigned based off social dynamics, which I can't really track or judge in a rejudging video. Number 2, I've cut out the vast majority of charity stars. You will get 1 star for winning a challenge, and then the talent show is worth 2. That is it. There will be no one who makes it to the finale out of nowhere. Number 3, unlike on the original season, every week is going to have 2 winners, 2 high queens, and then 4 safe queens. Then number 4, if you like this kind of video, please consider subscribing, but with all of that out of the way, let the fireworks begin. Episode 1 is going to be the Drag Queen Save the World remix, and for this challenge, I think we have a pretty clear top 4 and safe 4. The safe queens for this challenge are going to be Gottmik, Nina, Roxy, and Chanel. All of these queens were fine in the challenge, and some of them, like Roxy and Chanel, did very good on the runway, but I think everyone in the top 4 more than earned their slot, and I do think production got it right. The top 4 are Angeria, Plastique, Jorgeous, and Vanjie. Taking a brief look at every queen's performance, Angeria did a very good job. This was a huge redemption from her performance in the Season 14 remix. I love the reference to RuPaul's rant about reinventing the wheel in the Season 14 ball. Then for the runway, Angeria was able to fully embody her style. She did a great job in terms of the branding and tying it into her aesthetic. This was a very strong start for Angeria. Then for Jorgeous, she had a solid verse. It wasn't the most memorable for me, but the dancing was insane. Not only was her dancing great individually, she also played a massive role in the choreography for this challenge, and I don't think that can be understated enough. Choreography is incredibly difficult, especially when you're working with a group of queens whose dancing abilities range from Jorgeous to Gottmik. The final performance for this episode was very cohesive, and I think that is largely due to the work Jorgeous did. Then for Plastique, this performance was flawless. It is by far the most memorable for the challenge. She was great on the runway, it was branded very well towards her, and to this day, I do not know why Plastique was not in the top. If this was later in the competition and Plastique was doing really well and production was trying to sandbag her, I could at least understand where they were coming from, but this was episode 1. Plastique was not running away with the competition. Giving her the win here would have made complete sense, and I don't know why production decided not to. The final queen in the top is Vanjie. This was all around very good. Just like Angeria, she had a massive redemption from Season 11. Her Season 11 verse was not bad, but the performance was not giving. In this challenge, Vanjie was able to combine everything and give all around one of the most memorable performances of the night. The only thing working against her is her runway. It was not the most expensive thing, which is a bit of an issue when you have that runway stipend, and I don't see how it's branded to her. With all of that in mind, the top 2 of the week are going to be for her performance in the challenge, Plastique, and the other slot based off the fact that she was good at literally everything in this challenge is Angeria. Angeria and Plastique are going to lip-sync to $1 Million Bill by Whitney Houston, and based off the later lip-syncs we saw in the season, I do believe Angeria will be getting the win. Episode 2 is going to be the paintball, and just like in episode 1, I think there is a very clear top 4 and safe 4. The safe queens for this challenge are going to be Nina and Vanjie for having overall weaker performances. Jorgeous is going to be safe based off her looks from home, and then Angeria is going to be safe pretty much by default. I don't really have an issue with anything she wore, it's just that the 4 queens in the top had a stronger argument. Speaking of the queens in the top, we have Gottmik, Roxy, Plastique, and Chanel. Taking a look at their performances, Gottmik did a great job putting her runway stipend to good use. All of the looks are branded very well towards her, and the look she made in the workroom was amazing. It was a massive improvement over Season 13, where her look literally got mistaken for scraps. This was a massive redemption, even if she technically won both balls. Next up is going to be Plastique, who once again gave a consistently great performance in every category. Both of her looks from home were very well designed. I loved her drag imitates art look. Then for her final look, Jesus Christ, I had no idea she could sew that well. On Season 11, she did do very well in the sewing challenges, but I think all 3 of her runways in this episode are a testament to the fact that having varying silhouettes is a massive massive plus on Drag Race. As on season 11, it kinda looked like she was wearing the same look in different fonts every week. Next is Roxy. I think she had a great final look. I love the hair and I love the silhouette. The only thing I have against Roxy for this challenge is that her two looks from home are not really on the same level as anyone else in the top. The final queen in the top for this challenge is Chanel, who inversely to Roxy had two incredible looks from home and then a final look that was kind of busy and I didn't really like it. While I do fully understand why someone would like it, I think there is a lot going on and I don't really love that style or color of hair with that outfit. All of that in mind, the top two for this challenge are going to be Gottmik and Plastique, just like on the original season. They are going to lip sync to jump in the line, and Gottmik is going to win. Episode 3 is going to be Snatch Game, and just like the first two episodes, I think there is a pretty obvious top 4 and safe 4. The safe queens for this challenge are going to be Jorgeous, Plastique, Roxy, and Vanjie. Some of them were fine, and some of them were pretty bad, but I just couldn't make an argument for putting any of them over the top 4 of Angeria, Nina, Gottmik, and Chanel. Starting off with Angeria, she did a great job in this challenge. I don't know if it's an age thing, but I had no idea who Marla Gibbs was, but based off all of the research I did for this video, Angeria's impersonation was pretty solid, and in the end, I do think Angeria was really funny. Not to mention that her dragon runway was one of the best of the week. Then for Gottmik, I do think she was pretty funny in the challenge, and I think her runway was incredibly impactful and creative. That said, there is a pretty big minus for Gottmik's performance in that she did not do an actual person. I think in the last 2 years when it's gotten pretty bad, I've become progressively less and less accepting of made-up characters for Snatch Game, and while the dog she impersonated was technically real, it was still a dog, which means its performance was based off an entirely made-up person. Then for Nina and Chanel, I applaud them both for taking the risk of both impersonating the same person, but the downside of doing the same thing as another person is the fact that if someone does it better than you, it will be massive points against you. Looking at their performances, Nina did a great job. I don't know if anyone else got this vibe, but on season 11, it kind of felt like she just had a lot of ideas and was throwing them all out there. On this season, she had that same energy, but I think she was able to use it in a much more controlled way. Then for Chanel, this is technically her first Snatch Game, and I think she did a very good job. The look was right, all of the jokes were there. The only issue is, I think Nina was able to do a much better job volleying with the judges, and for those reasons, Nina is the superior Liberace, at least for me. With all of that in mind, the top two for this challenge are going to be Nina West and Angeria Paris Van Michaels. I know a lot of people are going to put Gottmik there, and I definitely understand that. It's just as great as her runway was, she didn't impersonate an actual person for Snatch Game. Angeria and Nina are going to lip sync to Banana, Angeria wins, and I'm just going to leave it at that. Moving on to episode 4, we have the Firefighter Makeover / Girl Groups Challenge. They threw a lot of stuff at the queens this week, and I think it's very impressive that it went as well as it did. Since in this challenge, the queens worked in pairs, I will be judging in teams. The two teams that I've deemed as safe for this week are the team of Angeria and Chanel, and Gottmik and Nina. Gottmik and Nina, while they didn't do the greatest job in the makeover, I do want to give them credit. They were, in my opinion, the most cohesive girl group of the night, even if in the challenge they were not the best. Then Angeria and Chanel, I really don't have much to say. It's a makeover and the verses were fine. It just wasn't up to the caliber of the rest of the cast. That leaves us with the top two teams of Jorgeous and Plastique and Roxy and Vanjie. For Roxy and Vanjie, they were incredible with the makeup. I remember how in the build up to the season, no one had any idea who the third queen they were with was. Then in terms of verses, I think they were very good, very fun, and I think they fit the prompt perfectly. The only issue I have with this group is the outfits. I know this is very much a thing of my personal taste, but I was not living for these outfits. This might be controversial to say, and I hope people understand what I mean when I say this. They looked less like a girl group and more like a fashion collection. Then finally, we have Jorgeous and Plastique. This was overall very cohesive. They all looked like they were part of the same group. The silhouettes were great, the fur was great, I loved the hair, and in the end, I do think they ended up with the strongest verses. To probably no one's surprise, the top two of the week are going to be Jorgeous and Plastique. To make a sports ball reference, they knocked this challenge out of the park. The two of them are going to lip sync to Black Cat by Janet Jackson, and while Jorgeous will very likely win this, Plastique is now at 3 wins in 4 episodes, which is not only absolutely insane, but 2 more than she had originally. With this trajectory, Plastique will very likely be making it to the end, as she should have. Moving on to episode 5, we have Property Queens. If I were producing this season, I would not have done this as a team challenge, but I am making this video based off what we saw in the season, so I will have to judge this in teams. The 2 safe teams are going to be Jorgeous and Gottmik because, yikes. And then Nina and Chanel because they were good. I just don't think they did as well as the top queens of Angie and Vanjie and Roxy and Plastique. Speaking of Vanjie and Angeria, they were pretty solid in the challenge. They had a lot of jokes throughout their advertisement, and I don't know for sure, but in my opinion, they ended up with the strongest prompt of any group. Then finally, we have the team of Roxy and Plastique. Both of these queens knocked the challenge out of the park. Plastique was a clear standout, and while upon first watch, I was kind of iffy between which of these teams to put in the top. I think in the end, Plastique being by far the best in the challenge is going to edge out Angeria and Vanjie, keeping the judging here exactly how it was. Plastique and Roxy are going to lip sync to Super Freaky Girl. Neither one of them knows the words, but I think Plastique didn't know the words harder, so Roxy will get the win. For anyone who has been keeping track, that puts Plastique at 4 wins out of a possible 5. She is absolutely running away with the season, and based off the fact that I'm not including charity stars, at this point she is pretty much a lock for the finale. Moving on to episode 6, we have the drag convention roast, and in this challenge, while there is definitely a debate as who goes in the top, I don't think anyone did really badly in this challenge but Gottmik. For the safe queens, Gottmik stole pretty much every part of the set that we saw, so she's gonna be safe. Nina and Chanel were both pretty good in the challenge, but I don't think they did better than anyone in the top. That leaves us with Roxy and Vanjie, who are fighting it out for the high/safe placement. Then the final queen who will be safe, and please hear me out on this, we have Roxy. Roxy did a very good job with the joke of, "I'm Roxy, the wig reveal one." But apart from that, I can't really remember anything else from her set. That leaves us with a top 4 of Angie, Plastique, Jorgeous, and Vanjie. For Vanjie, the main reason I put her in the top over Roxy is the burping Jorgeous joke. YouTube is not going to let me repeat it, but we all know what I'm talking about. This was, in my opinion, the single best joke of the episode, and while overall her set was kind of one note, it will propel her into high. That leaves us with Angeria, Jorgeous, and Plastique. Angeria was very good in this challenge. It was a huge redemption from season 14, even though she wasn't that bad originally. And while her runway was on the weaker side for this episode, I typically only use runways as tiebreakers, and in my opinion, she was the clear best, so she will be one of the slots in the top 2, leaving Plastique and Jorgeous to fight it out. For Jorgeous, I think she was very good in this challenge. It was an insane redemption from season 14, where she bombed her way out of the competition in 7th place. It was an overall great performance. Then for the Atomic Blonde runway, this was the best Jorgeous looked all season, and for me, this is the one week that Jorgeous had the by far best runway of the night. Then for Plastique, she did very good in the challenge. She had a lot of funny jokes just like Jorgeous, and for her look, she had a great top half, but I don't know what was going on with the bottom half. With that in mind, the runway will actually serve as a tiebreaker here, giving us a top 2 of Angeria and Jorgeous. Angeria and Jorgeous are going to lip sync to Be My Lover, and while this would be very close, I think I'm going to give it to Angeria, because in my mind, Jorgeous would go for the dancing route for the song, and that is something that we already saw on season 13, which would make Angeria's performance stand out more, so for that, Angeria will get the win. Moving on to episode 7, we have the Meeting in the Ladies' Room acting challenge. This is an incredibly unique concept for a challenge, and in my opinion, this is the strongest concept for a challenge all season. The safe queens for this challenge are going to be Gottmik, Jorgeous, Plastique, and Vanjie. I don't really have anything to say about any of them, it's just none of them really stuck out, and prior to rewatching the challenge for this video, I didn't really remember anything out of any of them. That will leave us with a top 4 of Angeria, Nina, Roxy, and Chanel. Starting off with Roxy, she was funny and entertaining, it just wasn't as good as the rest of the 3, so for this challenge, I will be putting Roxy in 4th. Then for Angeria, she had me cracking up this entire challenge. It was very funny, and I think her blackmail joke was the high point of the night. Then for her runway, I think she did a very good job, very underrated. Then we have Chanel, who went the meta route for this challenge. It was very entertaining, and I appreciate that someone was able to take that route. Then for Nina, I think she just went classic Drag Race acting challenge. It is within her skill set and it works. As much as Nina has been attacked by the fanbase this season, I have to give credit where credit is due. The things that Nina is good at, she is really good at. For the top 2 for this challenge, Angeria is taking one of the slots, and for the other, Chanel and Nina are pretty much tied, which means I'm going to look at the runways for a tiebreaker. Nina did a very good job this challenge. It was the strongest runway she had ever had on Drag Race. For Chanel, it was not bad, but it was nowhere near as good as Nina. That gives us a top 2 of Angeria and Nina. Angeria and Nina are gonna lip sync to Lover Girl, and just like a lot of the fanbase thought when this episode was initially airing, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Nina kinda won that for me. All of that said, before I move on, I just wanted to bring attention to something that I just noticed. The 4 challenges that Angeria was the best at this season were Snatch Game, the Acting Challenge, the Roomix, and the Roast, which were, from my perspective, the 4 challenges she struggled with the most on season 14. Next up is going to be episode 8, which is the Make Your Own Kind of Rusic Design Challenge. The obvious picks for safe queens in this challenge are Jorgeous, Chanel, and Vanjie. None of them were bad, it's just that none of them were top worthy. Then for the final safe slot, a lot of people would put Angeria, but I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say Gottmik. While in the end, Gottmik's look required a lot of technical skill to make, the fact that a look is technically well constructed does not mean it looks good or works. I don't know why she used that purse, it didn't really fit with the theme and looked kind of tacky compared to her runway. Then the actual runway, I just didn't enjoy. I do understand why people like it, and I understand why people will disagree with this, but for me, I can fully acknowledge that yes, it was incredibly well constructed, but that does not mean it is a good look. That judging will give us a top 4 of Roxy, Plastique, Angeria, and Nina. Angeria did a great job fitting with her theme. This was a very well constructed look, but compared to the others, it is a solid 4th. Next up is going to be Nina, who absolutely blew me away. I had no idea she would do well in a design challenge, especially after what we saw in the ball, but wow. Her look fit perfectly with the song she was assigned. Next is going to be Plastique. Dear God, she is a star. Dear God, I want her on that sewing themed miniseries they did a few months back so badly. She was able to make this star in like 2 days. It was by far the best in this challenge. And if there was any doubt as to who the runway queen of the season was before this episode, it is fully gone. The final queen in the top is Roxy, who I think did a great job. When the episode first came out, I saw a lot of people debating whether she should have been in the top or not. I think she did a great job. The look is very well constructed, it is branded very well towards Roxy, and I think her look would have landed even better for me if I had actually known the song she was assigned. Regardless of that, the top 2 are going to be Plastique and Roxy, just like on the original season. They will lip sync to No One Gets the Prize. Plastique gives her strongest lip sync performance to date, but unfortunately Roxy also gives her strongest lip sync performance to date and wins. If you have been keeping track, this is Plastique's 5th win this season, and I believe math-wise she is now a lock for the finale. Moving on to the end game of the season, we have episode 9, which is Rosemary's Baby Shower the Rusical. This is one of the most unique prompts for a challenge I've seen Drag Race do in the time I've been a fan, and I'm very happy for it, even if in the end we did not get the Five Nights at Freddy's acting challenge that people were talking about before the season started. I would have loved that, but based off what we have, this is a very difficult episode to judge, as you could make a pretty solid argument for everyone. In the end though, I decided to go with the 4 safe queens of Gottmik, who was, in my opinion, the weakest of the 3 guests. Nina West, who did the best she could with the part she had, it's just the part she had wasn't good. Then Angeria, who was fine on the runway and fine in the challenge, it's just that compared to everyone else, she didn't really shine. Then the final safe slot is gonna go to Plastique. She was very entertaining in the challenge. I watched her performance first and I loved it, but in the end I feel the top 4 did at least slightly better than her. Those safe queens will leave us with the top 4 of Jorgeous, Roxy, Vanjie, and Chanel. For Chanel, she was very outside the box on the runway. I loved her in the Rusical, not only in the parts she was there, but in the background she never broke character, and that is very impressive. This was a great week for Chanel. Next is going to be Vanjie. She stole the show in the end, and I think made a very smart choice in this episode to pick the final role to enter the stage. Unlike Anjiri and Chanel, who were on stage for the entire challenge and had to stay in character, Vanjie was able to wait backstage, but for the entire time she was on stage, she was the center of attention. That is the kind of part that you want in a musical. Then for Roxy and Jorgeous, they both did an incredible job as the house guests for the challenge. Roxy's Pennywise voice was amazing. I didn't fully realize who it was until her performance was over. It was a great showing on Roxy's part, even if her runway wasn't the strongest. Then we have Jorgeous, who absolutely dominated this challenge. This is one of the most clear-cut wins of the entire season. Her performance went viral, though her runway was really good, and she showed a lot of growth from season 14 where she was in the bottom for the Rusical. Based off all of that, just like it should have been on the original season, the top two for this challenge are going to be Jorgeous and Vanjie. They are going to lip sync to Love Come Home. On the original season, I did not really enjoy this song or lip sync, but I do think this would end up being a double save. Vanjie and Jorgeous have a lot of the same strengths, and I think this lip sync would be incredibly even. So for that, this lip sync is going to be a double save. Moving on to episode 10, we have the lip sync smackdown, and I am not going to change a thing. In round 1, Angeria beats Gottmik, Vanjie beats Plastique, Chanel beats Nina, and Roxy beats Jorgeous. These were some pretty solid lip syncs, but I think all of them had a clear winner, so we will move on to round 2. Round 2 is more of the same. I think this is the overall strongest round of the episode. Chanel and Vanjie did a great job to I'm Every Woman, but Chanel won. Then for Roxy and Angeria, Groove is in the Heart. I was strongly debating having this be a double save and having a final 3 for this challenge, but in the end, I do think Roxy won this lip sync like 55-45, and I agree with production. We have the same final 2 of Chanel and Roxy. Chanel and Roxy are going to lip sync to break free, Roxy wins, and the episode is over. I really didn't have much to say for this episode, but if you have not watched Deja Sky's video on this, I'll link it in the description. It was very well made, and I think she had some really good insights, so I would strongly recommend watching that. With all of that out of the way, before I move on to the talent show and finale, I think the main thing that dragged down this episode for me is the fact that the spoilers were better than what happened. For those of you who do not follow the spoilers, the original song list for this episode included Fame by Irene Cara, Anti-Hero by Taylor Swift, If I Could Turn Back Time by Cher, and Beach House by Carly Rae Jepsen, which I was personally very excited about, but in the end it was a completely fake spoiler. I don't know where they got that song list, but I was incredibly excited and then incredibly disappointed. One final thing before I get into the talent show though, here are the current star tallies for all of the queens. Plastique Chiara is in first place with 5 badges, Angeria is in second place with 4, Roxy and Jorgeous are tied for third at 3, Nina West is at 2, then Gottmik, Chanel, and Vanjie are all at 1. And like I said before, the talent show is worth 2 stars, which means everyone has a shot at the finale, but based off the current tallies, no one is able to fully take a guaranteed finalist slot away from them. Finishing off the competitive portion of the season, we have episode 11, which is the All-Stars Variety Show. This was overall not a very strong challenge. The only person who was really able to show a successful talent outside of lip-syncing was Chanel, but regardless of that, here is where I landed for the judging. The safe queens for the challenge are going to be Gottmik, whose performance was kinda iffy, Nina West, who was very fun and well-branded, it just didn't stack up to the rest of the cast, Roxy Andrews, who was here to make it clear that the only place she was able to record her audio was a warehouse 10 miles away from civilization. Then the final safe slot is gonna go to Angeria. I enjoyed her performance a lot more than a lot of other people. Solid 5th, but I don't think I could justify putting her in the top over anyone else. The top 4 for the challenge are going to be Chanel, Plastique, Jorgeous, and Vanjie. For Chanel, this was a very dominant performance. She gained a lot of momentum in the end stages of this competition. And while prior to the episode, I did know she was able to juggle, I had no idea she was as strong of a performer as she was. Chanel was the #1 best queen in this challenge and will be one of the slots in the top 2. That leaves us with Plastique, Jorgeous, and Vanjie, all of which lip-synced to an original track. While Vanjie's dancing was very good, I don't think there's anything that set her performance outside of a regular original track. Then between Jorgeous and Plastique, this is pretty much just gonna come down to the power move at the end. For Plastique, it was roasting marshmallows on her bra. Then for Jorgeous, it was the really cool gymnastics move she did. In the end though, factoring in their performances and final runways, I think I'm gonna give the other slot in the final 2 to Plastique. That will give us a top 2 of Chanel and Plastique. They both win 2 badges, but we'll get to that that in a minute. Now though, we have a lip sync. On the original season, we did not have one, but since this is a separate episode than the finale, I'm gonna give us one. Based off the original spoilers for the Lollapalooza, I'm gonna go with Fame by Irene Cara just to give Chanel one final great moment at the end of the season, Chanel and Plastique lip sync, and based off what we saw throughout the season, Chanel is going to get the win. We've arrived at episode 12, which is the finale, and now let's look at the badge totals. Unfortunately tied for last place, we have Gottmik and Vanjie each at 1 badge, Nina West is in 6th place at 2, Jorgeous, Roxy, and Chanel are tied for 3rd at 3 each, Angeria is in 2nd at 4, and then Plastique is in 1st at 7. When I was planning out this video and I ended up with a 3-way tie, I thought about a lot of different tiebreakers throughout the season, but in the end, I think the fairest thing to do is to do a 3-way lip sync for the finale between Roxy, Chanel, and Jorgeous. Going once again from the catalog of songs cut from the Lollapalooza, I'm going to have Roxy, Jorgeous, and Chanel lip sync to If I Could Turn Back Time by Cher. Jorgeous would put up a solid fight, but this is mainly a competition between Roxy and Chanel. While both of these queens have a pretty solid shot, I think I'm going to give it to Roxy, but this would be an incredibly close battle. This will give us a final 3 for the season of Angeria Paris Van Michaels, Plastique Tiara, and Roxy Andrews, and based off everything we've seen throughout the season, I'm not going to be cutting anyone, all 3 of them will move on. Before I get to the final lip sync though, up on the screen right now are going to be the track records of everyone in the final 3. Plastique Tiara is in 1st place with a score of 13 and 6 wins, Angeria is in 2nd with a score of 11 points and 4 wins, then Roxy is in 3rd with a score of 10 points and 3 wins. While Plastique is definitely the frontrunner, this really can go any way. The time has come for the queens to lip sync for the crown. It is once again going to be Rhythm Nation, and based off everything we saw this season, while she is an incredibly talented queen and had a near flawless run on the season, Plastique Tiara will not be winning the season. While her lip sync skills throughout the season were actually pretty solid, her actually knowing the word skills were really bad, and for that, I don't think she's gonna win. That leaves us with Angeria and Roxy just like on the original season, and I can see a very strong argument for both. For Angeria, she absolutely embodied the spirit of All-Stars. She was able to improve in all of the places she struggled on her original season, and I have to give her massive credit for that. She was also very strong on the final runway, and overall the season was a great run for her, even if in the end she lost a bit of momentum in the last 3 episodes, being safe twice and high once. Then for Roxy, this is the culmination of her runs across 3 seasons. If there was ever a time to crown Roxy, it would be now, and she gained a lot of momentum towards the end of the season. Is that enough for her to win though? I'm not sure. Factoring in the performances in the final lip sync, how they did throughout the competition, in the end I decided that the winner of the season that I just presented should be Angeria Paris Van Michaels. Do I think this will be incredibly controversial, just like it was originally? Yes. That said, I stand by it. Angeria had an all-time great run on this season, and I believe that RuPaul did her a massive disservice by giving her such a terrible edit. If she had been both edited and judged properly throughout the season, she would have been viewed as a much stronger winner. I don't understand the hate for her. Angeria is amazing, she embodied the spirit of All-Stars, and for those reasons, I will be giving her the win. Also, since I feel production didn't really give out as much money as they should have for a charity season, I've created a system this season where every week the top 2 get $5,000, the lip sync winner gets $10K, and each runner-up gets $50K. Thank you all so much if you made it this far. If you can get past the fact that I gave Angeria the win, please consider subscribing. It really helps out my channel. But as more of a general thing, is there any other type of video for All-Stars 9 you think I should do? I'm strongly considering making a video of what All-Stars 9 would have been if it had eliminations, but if you have any other ideas, please let me know. But for now, that is all I have. Do you want non-Emmy nominated gay shit? Well then you should check out the RuPaul's Drag Race Rejudged YouTube channel and hit subscribe.